I'm coming to you as a high school math teacher. I teach at Notre Dame for boys. You've probably gone by it many times on Dempster, and this is my 12th year there. I'd like to talk to you about one of my students. I mean, I have several stories, but this one kind of stands out. When I'm teaching, oftentimes well, of course, I'm going to question my students, but I don't necessarily call with on the students with their hands up. I mean, I like to call on the students who aren't paying attention, you know, trying to catch them. But plus, I want to hear from everybody. So I call on this one student, and of course, he doesn't have his hand up, and he just gets this real deer in the headlights look. I mean, you know, just horrified. And you know, it's true. Like a lot of students don't necessarily like being called on, but this kid just looked shocked. And you know, and he's like, I don't know. So, you know, even if a student does know the answer, I'll try to kind of question him and bring it out of him. And he was just like shutting down. He's just like, I don't know. So, of course, I go on to somebody else. Well, this student also wasn't. You can probably imagine he wasn't doing real well on his tests and quizzes either. So I pulled him aside after class and I said, you know, you really should come in after school and get some help. And I said, you know, I'm not gonna stand over you. I'm not gonna, you know, you just come in, sit down, do your homework. If you have some questions, fine. And if not, well, you know, I'll leave you alone. So he did start coming in after school. And after about 3 days of coming in after school, his very next quiz, he got a much higher grade. He probably got like a B instead of a D. He was thrilled. He was absolutely thrilled. I couldn't even wait to show him his quiz. Plus, then he started raising his hand in class because he was coming in after school. He knew the material better. He started raising his hand. And you could tell he was eager to participate. And that, you know, that, of course, that makes me feel great whenever something like that happens. But the thing about it is, it's not necessarily my instruction. I don't feel it did it. It was the fact that I pulled him aside and said, you need to come in after school. And that was something he needed to do anyway. And I'm sure he knew he needed to do it. But it was just taking him aside and saying, you need to do this. And he did it. So when I look at success with my students, there's the academic success, of course. You know, for example, when you give a test or a quiz, and you know, you can see that they know things that they didn't know before, which is great. But a lot of what I might even consider more important is that they learn how to help themselves. So if a student is having trouble, or you know, that he knows that he needs to basically sit down and do the work, or come in after school, ask some questions, or sometimes it's a matter of knowing how to study. I mean, students will say, well, how should I study math? And I will tell them, you know, this is what you need to do. So it's not just for my class, it's so that when, you know, in the future, when he has something that he's struggling with, he will know that it's, okay. That was the Holy Spirit. So that in the future he'll know that, you know, it's not impossible to learn something. He can, you know, he can attack it a certain way and master it. So when I tell students to do things like this, like come in after school, I figure I'm just helping them do the things that they should do on their own anyway. And in fact, I'm basically helping them to do what is God's will for them. A long time ago, I must have been in a homily. You know, somebody must have asked, how can you know what is God's will for you? and was giving the homily, said, well, one way of knowing what's God's will for you is where you are in life. I mean, if you're a student or a child, you can know God's will for you is to obey your parents and to be kind to your siblings and kind to your friends and to study hard in school. And if you're a married person, God's will for you is to love your spouse and be faithful to your spouse, take care of your children. If you have a job, God's will for you is to do well at that job. And I just look at what I'm doing as helping those students do what is God's will for them. I think another way that we know what God's will for us is by our talents. As far as teaching goes, everybody has a mind, everybody has a brain, we all have intelligence. We're also all supposed to develop that, not just for our own personal use, but to use in our lives, in our jobs, in our families. And that's another way that I feel that I am helping the students do what is God's will for them. Now, how did I get into teaching? Was it because I was following God's will for me? Well, I'd have to say not necessarily, because that wasn't even on my mind when I got into teaching. I would have to say that it was kind of an accident, a happy accident, I guess. When I started college, math was not, I definitely wasn't thinking of going into math. I actually liked languages a lot better, but one of my counselors, in looking at my test scores, said, you know, you're pretty good at math for a girl. And so nobody had ever really told me that I was good at math before, so I thought, okay, I'll try going into this. I had no idea what I was going to do with it, but as I was going through college, a chance offered up to do some tutoring for continuing education students, and they were looking for math students to tutor these people, and they were going to pay us. So, of course, I thought that this is great. I could do this. So, but what I found was that I absolutely loved it. I just loved it. And I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a teacher. Now, today, they are always encouraging kids to investigate careers and investigate colleges and think about what they want to do. And when I was in high school, I didn't think about it at all. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I've always kind of looked back and thought, boy, you are really clueless. You are lucky that you ended up where you are. But then as I got older, I thought, no, what it was God leading me where I was supposed to be. And I think God leads us by our talents. I mean, somebody told me that he thought I had a talent for math, and then when I went into tutoring, I felt I had a talent to teach. And so, in addition to helping students with their academics or getting them to do what they need to do, I think another important thing we can do is help them realize their talents, help them realize what they're good at, because that is probably where God is leading them. And as far as my gift to you, I can just tell you a few things about what I've discovered in working with kids. One thing is that the same strategy won't work for every child. A lot of times I have parents say to me, well, should I get a tutor for my son? Well, for some kids that can be a good thing because they might need the confidence or support of a tutor, but some students will just sit back and expect the tutor to do all the work. So you really have to know your child. Not everything is going to work for every student. Another thing is, and I'm sure most people who are parents are, but you should be vigilant in your student success. I mean, at our school we have, the grades are online, and you should monitor what's going on in your student's academic career, and if you see some glitches, try to follow it up with them. One thing that I don't think parents should do, at least not at the high school level, is intervene too much. I think you should coach your students. If they run into difficulty with a subject or with a teacher or whatever, try to help them negotiate it themselves, because sooner or later they're going to run into problems like in college or what have you, that they're going to have to solve themselves. So coach them, but don't necessarily intervene. Try to let them handle it themselves. You could say to them, well, what do you think you should do? And then maybe say, well, did you try this? And go from there. Another thing parents can do is just to promote learning in your families. I think we live in a culture that doesn't necessarily value learning. And if you show your children that you do value learning and value their talents, that's one way to help them succeed. And that kind of concludes my talk, so I don't know if you have any questions.
What do you love about your Catholic faith?
Oh, in talking about talents, I think one of the great things that we Catholics have that sets us apart from some of the other religions is our devotion to the saints. And if you read any of the biographies of the saints, I've become amazed at the wide variety. I mean, you have outgoing people, you have quiet people, you have old people, young people, men, women, from every culture, every country, and yet they all have certain talents that they used, that they devoted to God, and it means that everybody can become a saint. And I just wish more people realized this.
What is the most advanced math class that they teach there at Notre Dame?
We go as high as AP Calculus. We call it Calculus BC.
Do they get any college credit?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say probably about 5% of our of the guys end up taking that. Anything else?
Do you have a favorite saint?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I kind of gravitate toward Elizabeth Seton because she was a teacher and a mother. Yeah, I'd probably have to say that she's my favorite. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.